Leafs trade talks are really starting to escalate as a new report from Elliot Friedman has dropped, revealing the Toronto Maple Leafs trade plans. We're going to break down that report and discuss exactly what this means going forward as Brad Treliving is preparing to make some huge moves. So stay tuned for all that in this episode, folks. But before we get into a quick reminder, if you're a part of the 70 or so percent who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. So make sure to smash that subscribe button. Reminder, we'll be live following tomorrow's game on New Year's Eve, and the game is early. So make sure to stay tuned for all that. Now, Darius, there's a lot to go over today. The Leafs, of course, play tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, an afternoon game, but there is a lot of trade rumors circulating surrounding the Leafs and, of course, surrounding the NHL as well. And a lot of teams now are starting, we're at the point of the year where teams are starting to figure out whether they're going to be buyers, whether they're going to be sellers, what players they covet more than others. And Elliot Friedman, the most notable reporter in the industry in the NHL, has dropped a new report. And he said the Leafs ideally want a center who is strong defensively, can contribute offensively, and can take some pressure off of Matthews and Tavares by handling matchups against the other top lines when needed. Now, this is from Jonas Siegel. We have some stuff from Elliot Friedman as well, which we'll get into in a minute. But let's start with the Siegel report. This is very interesting, and we know they've been pursuing ideally a third line center. John Tavares has really taken over that second line center spot, and obviously with Austin Matthews, he's been moving between the top and second line. But they want one who's strong defensively and can contribute offensively to take some pressure off of Matthews and Tavares. So this is as clear cut as it's been said, a third line center, which is very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. And we know that the Leafs, they have a couple holes this year compared to last year or previous years. Not too many holes. I think Brad Treliving's done a great job in the summer of really bolstering up this team and preparing them for injuries and stuff like that. But one glaring hole this year, there's a few, but one glaring hole that we've seen this year is they need another center and probably a third line center. As we've seen this year, the resurgence of John Tavares. Yes, it's a contract year and all of that, but I think last year was an outlier. I still think that he's playing at a very, very high level. Obviously, Austin Matthews is a great player, one of the best in the league, and is having injury trouble this year. But they need a third line center that we've known for a while. And I think this is very interesting that they're going to target a couple guys. We'll talk about a couple guys in this video and maybe one other guy that I'm just going to throw out there as somebody that they could possibly target. But we know that they need a third line center, and it sounds like they're ready to throw some assets at that. Like that's the one move that they are prepared to throw everything at the wall and say, we need this, and this is going to help us get over the hump.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different things to go over. And let's dive into now the Elliot Friedman report as well here. It goes on to say that their focus ahead of the deadline is a center. That is their number one focus. If they're going to spend assets on a center, they are preferred to be someone with term. He adds that they have been okay with their defense after making changes in the summer and could look to add someone who fits well with Riley. But the top priority remains acquiring a center. So this is actually shaping out to be a very busy trade deadline for Brad Treliving. That's not something he usually does, but the verbiage that Elliot Friedman is using here, of course, the number one priority is a center, but they're also willing to do a trade for a defenseman that help pair with Morgan Riley if something comes up here. And we'll dive into a couple targets that have been reported and rumored as well. But I want to look at the lines first. And of course, this is without Austin Matthews, and take these with a grain of salt. But the way these lines have been going, we've seen Matthew Nyes kind of start to perform a bit worse since Austin Matthews has been out, and Craig Berube called him out a little bit. They desperately need a third line center. And when you're looking at who they have now, of course, it's a little bit skewed because they don't have Austin Matthews. But the type of players I'm going to get into in a minute here, you really need, like the report came out and said, obviously a defensive-minded center, but just someone who can take some of the pressure off a lot of these other guys and really help take the pressure off of Austin Matthews. We've seen Mitch Marner play way better in Austin Matthews' absence. Obviously, Craig Berube is going to hopefully be working on finding a way to fix that, and maybe separating them in the lines would be the number one option for that. But as you look at the lines here, Darius, I think we'll dive into a couple targets here, but they need someone who can help take some of the pressure, like the reports have mentioned, off of Austin Matthews and, of course, John Tavares in the second line as well.
I'm not even sure they want to go out and get a defensive center either. I think they want a guy who can be a two-way guy, can help chip in with scoring, but just be responsible defensively. Not a guy that's like a complete defensive centerman, right? And when you look at the lineup like you have up here, and the third line, they have been kind of rolling at times over the last couple weeks, right? We've seen some brilliance from them, but Max Domi, I don't think he should be playing center. He should be on the wing. Maybe Robertson comes out of the lineup. Maybe it's Holmberg that comes out of the lineup when Matthews comes back, right? David Camp shifts down. But they need another centerman in that third line center role, like a natural center, not Max Domi, because again, Max Domi's not great defensively either. Can he chip in for goals? Yes, but he should be on the wing. His game is better suited on the game. They need to go out and get a center. And again, not just a defensively minded guy, a guy who can play a two-way game. And he doesn't have to be elite at either of them, right? Because I've seen elite third line center thrown out there. I don't know what that means. You're going to get a pretty good third line center. But yeah, I think they should spend assets in this way, because if you take more pressure off of the two top guys, they can go out there and do their thing. So if you want to play the matchup game, which we've seen in previous playoffs, a lot of coaches pay a lot of attention to it, and it's a big part of the game. It's a game in the game itself. So I think that they need another guy there that can at least, help out in those areas. It doesn't have to be an elite guy. It doesn't have to be a first line center, but a guy who can come in and kind of shore up that third line.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the guys that have been mentioned. Obviously, one that Leafs have been linked to a lot in reports is Brock Nelson, 33 years old. Obviously, pretty big guy, 6'4", 212, but his cap hit is $6 million. He's a UFA after this season, so this would be a rental. And as you look at some of the reports basically saying they want someone ideally who, has term, Brock Nelson doesn't fit that. And a lot of the guys that are being reported, whether it's Yanni Gourde and Brock Nelson, we'll dive into Gourde in a minute here, do not have term. But at the same time, as you look at a guy like Brock Nelson, a very, very solid, would be perfect, third line center, 33 years old. But when you're looking at players with term and centers with term specifically, there's not that many out there from teams that are selling that are willing to give up assets that actually have term left on their contracts, which is why last trade deadline, Brad Treliving gave up all his assets for rentals. And now, once again, it seems like they're going to be pursuing someone with term, but a lot of the best options available, unfortunately, don't have term, whether that is Brock Nelson or Yanni Gourde. And they also have pretty hefty cap hits. You're going to have to give up some assets in order to make the other team retain at least half or more of the salary, depending on who you're going for here. But they're very good players. However, the big thing here is that if they're looking for somebody with term, like Elliot Friedman says, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to actually acquire someone like that without either giving up more assets or just finding a team who's willing to trade one of their core pieces. And term can be as little as 2 years left, as opposed to being a pending UFA as well.
I think that's what they're looking at. I think they want an older option with one more year left on their deal, not like multiple years left on their deal. Although I do think Brad Treliving could go way off the board here and get a little bit creative. I do see that with him sometimes, that he could do something that we're not really expecting. Although the most notable targets are obviously Brock Nelson, Yanni Gourde, right? And when you look at them, the cap hits are pretty egregious, right? Like the Leafs are going to have to give up a lot just to get the player. Not a lot, but they're going to have to spend some assets to get the player because they're good players in their own right. And then on top of it, you need retained salary. You might have to get a third team involved, right? Because it's just not going to work for the Leafs at those salary caps. So, or that cap hit, excuse me. But I think they're very interesting options that the Leafs should still definitely consider. Yanni Gourde's a little small, right? Like when you get to the playoffs, the talk of Mitch Marner not playing center is because he's small and he's 6 feet tall. So obviously Yanni Gourde's a little bit smaller than that. And then when you look at Brock Nelson, a big body, I think he could help this team. But again, you have to consider all things: the cap hit, his age, the fact that he's not signed, past this year. So I wonder if they do go off the board. One guy I'm going to throw out there, and we talked about it on stream, Evgeny Malkin. I'm not sure if Kyle Dubas wants to make a trade with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but if the Leafs really wanted to do something crazy and make a big splash, because at this point, I think in the next 2 years, they got to do something drastic to really get this team over the hump, because I think that their play style is slowly changing with Craig Berube, but they got to do just something to change things up a little bit, shake something up. So maybe it's Evgeny Malkin. He knows how to win. Yes, he's older, but he's had a bit of a resurgent season himself. So I think that could be another interesting option.
Yeah, and Evgeny Malkin has term. He is a veteran. He would fit perfectly. And obviously, third line center, wherever they want to play him, depending on what happens, it'll be interesting to see. But let us know down below what your thoughts are on all this. And let us know as well what your thoughts are on the Elliot Friedman report. Things are going to get very interesting. We're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. And we will see you guys later.